Monday, November 10th, we're kicking off a new training cycle, ULTIMUS, for all of our online training programs, TTT Compete, TTT 60, and TTT Affiliate. In this video, we're going to specifically talk about what's happening in TTT Compete. If competing is no longer your thing, make sure you check out the overviews for our TTT 60 program. And if you run a gym, check out our overview for TTT Affiliate. All right, welcome everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about what training looks like for the next upcoming cycle. I've got Coach Adam Rogers here, as well as Coach Max el-hag. Max is going to dive in with a little bit of detail about the strength work. Adam will tee us off with some of the CrossFit work and where we're heading there. Max, tell us what some of the big picture ideas and overviews are with where we're going with strength progressions.
Yeah, so last cycle was a big, heavy emphasis on strength endurance. We did Linda, we did a strength gauntlet, we did a lot more like 5RM type lifts. This cycle is going to be a shift more towards 1RM development. There is going to be one 3RM, and I'll list all the 6 tests when I get to deep dive. But basically, this is kind of the last time of the year where we can really work to reestablish and try to establish a peak 1RM, because when we move into the next cycle after this, it's really very competition prep, and it's very hard to get your 1RMs up. So the shift in focus is going to go from strength endurance towards just very linear 1RM development and a bunch of lifts.
Yeah, it's kind of like your last opportunity for the year to dive into a real specific strength block to get those 1RMs up. All right, CrossFit, endurance, conditioning, where are we heading?
Yeah, I think the big goal for me inside of this block for CrossFit is to start blending the qualities a little bit more. I think in the last cycle, we tried to make sure that we were building up density and volume in some of the isolated skill components like toes to bar and chest to bar and handstand push-ups. Instead of having them build up and be in their own silos, now we're going to start blending them in a little bit more across the course of the week. So we'll have more progressions that are a little bit more sport specific, where they're tested alongside other movements instead of just by themselves. And then we're also going to have 3 major builds in terms of like thematics that we want to try and make sure that we're touching at this time of the year.
Yeah, awesome. And 2 of those will actually be like tests that are somewhat benchmarks for the cycle.
Yeah.
All right. Strength work. Let's dive in, go a little bit more detail. We just came off of a pretty heavily biased strength endurance cycle. A lot of like 5RMs tested, a lot of, 20 reps for time for snatch and clean. And then now we're transitioning pretty noticeably into back to more like linear 1RM strength development.
Yeah, so I'll just list off the tests, and then I don't think it makes sense to go through every progression that were written, but we can just talk themes there. So we're doing 1RM snatch, 3RM back squat or 3RM bench press, 1RM back squat, 1RM weighted pull-up, 1RM overhead squat, and 1RM clean and jerk. So obviously the 2 major Olympic lifts, there's an upper body press and an upper body pull, and then the overhead squat's kind of like it's a very sport-specific strength thing. Like, it's tested very often in the CrossFit Total. It's tested a lot of times in Metcon. So we kind of wanted to make sure that was specifically in there as one of the tests that, not all of these tests, we're running straight line progressions every single week on, but you can expect in the course of the cycle to establish numbers for these, because when we move into the next cycle, we're going to reference a lot of like, hey, use X percentage of this when you're doing it after a Metcon, or use X percentage in a Metcon setting. So these are also kind of to benchmark your numbers for the whole season.
Yeah. So if we're coming off of more of like a strength endurance biased focus that we talked about, now having more, like putting a lot of effort into building the 1RMs back up, like why is it so important now, and why would we say that this is a good time to do this versus when we kind of get into that more competition peak or open prep season that's coming up next year?
Yeah, I mean, in any competition prep for mixed stuff for CrossFit, it's just really hard to actually get your 1RMs to go up, because oftentimes you're coming into sessions sore. Like if you did a 21, 18, 15, 12, 9, 6, 3 chest to bar thruster workout on a Monday, yet your legs and upper body are probably sore, that are going to impact snatch mechanics or squat mechanics on Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's very hard when you start to like really ramp up the intensity and volume of sports stuff to really, really focus on your 1RM. So our thought process was, before we get to that sport specific time, you have one real good block to really focus on just driving the 1RMs up, because once you get past this part of the season, it's just much more important as an athlete to just be good at Metcons at that point.
Yeah. All right. And then, so from that assortment of tests, we've got 6 of them that we lifted. Like you had mentioned, not all of them is going to have like a specific linear progression, but we are going to have, varied touches on them through the weeks to make sure that you are somewhat moving the needle. And then one of them is actually going to be a test that's included in our WIC workouts, which is our basically our online program, in-house community-based competition that we do at the end of every year. So I'm pretty excited to kind of interlay that in, because it's an opportunity for you to see some of the hard work that you did with the progressions and put it into a competition format.
Do you want me to go into any of the details of the progressions in terms of some of them being like the snatch is relatively linear in its progression? Some of them are like, hey, 1 week, a week we have a heavy opportunity, and then the next week it's more of a lighter and higher volume, and it goes back and forth. Or they could just look at the cycle overview.
No, I think touch on that, because some people watching might want to know, all right, well, if we're going to do all those lifts, like how do you put all that in a week? And then which ones are kind of primary, which ones are secondary, which ones have like the very rigid structure that you go on a week-to-week basis with, and which ones are like more of an A-week, B-week split?
Okay, I'll talk a little bit about all those, and then also just know like I built some progressions for other strength components that aren't in our test retest, like deadlift, for example. It's a 8-week cycle that we're going into, and deadlift is running basically 2 5-3-1 progressions in there. It's just a low volume. I think 5-3-1 is just a great structure for people to get heavy lifts, but in low volume on a movement. So that's not being tested, but it's being trained throughout the course of the cycle. So your strength will be more varied than just these specifically.
Yeah, we've had a lot of success with those Wendler style progressions for some of the slow lifts, because again, like you said, it's lower volume, but you can also self-regulate it very easily. So, we normally will have like a 5-3 and then like an AMRAP at whatever percentage -1. So it's more of like a top set for the day.
Yeah, it's just like one top set.
Yep.
Okay, so then to go into the actual test, snatches is like a very linear style progression. I actually took it from some old work that I did with Danny Camargo, who's an Olympic lifting coach from Florida that was part of like national teams and stuff like that. And I took some of his progressive models for programs that he showed me and wrote for me back in the day, and kind of modeled them out so that we can get to a testing point at the end of the cycle. So that one is going to be relatively linear and throughout the course of the whole, like every week. Bench press and weighted pull up are on Tuesdays and go back and forth together. And they're, again, another pretty continuous progression throughout the cycle. The Wednesday day, like I said, has a deadlift Wendler day, but it's not part of the test retest, but it does have progressions of the overhead squat and clean and jerk basically alternating there. So some are A week and B week. And then the end of the week is more specifically like accessory work for all of that stuff. So that way there's more room for the throwdown and the CrossFit-y stuff that's coming in there. So that's like a little bit of idea of kind of what we're working on from a progression standpoint of each test.
Yeah, so I like that. It's pretty balanced out, and it's very clear like where we're heading with each one of those elements, which saves room and space and time for some of the conditioning-based progressions that we've got. So
it does.
Let's dive into those.
It's so nice of you, Max.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Some of the benchmarks we're doing this cycle, I'm pretty excited about. Like the beep test that we'll go into in a second is challenging and fun, but it's also like still more of like a training test versus like a very sport specific test. So talk about that, and then let's go into the other ones as well.
The beep test is interesting because a lot of the cycle test retests that we've had to this point have had really, really big PRs associated with them, because we have very specific progressions based off of the initial test. The tests themselves sort of set themselves up to quantify in terms of like, you got a lot better on this. A beep test isn't really that way. Like a beep test, you might end up getting an extra 30 to 50 meters on a row after 25 to 30 minutes of work.
Hold on, for those who don't know a beep test, what is it?
We're getting there, man. I'm about to ask that.
On that. So a beep test is basically, this is the way that I was taught a beep test back in my college soccer days.
In my day.
It's the same amount of work trying to be accomplished in a shrinking time window. And so what you're going to do is you're going to do 10 lateral burpees over the rower, and then you're going to row either 500 meters for guys or 450 meters for girls. It starts off with a really big time window. I think the first time window is 4 minutes. That time window is going to shrink as you go. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that the first couple of rounds, there was a very low barrier to entry. Everybody could get through the first couple of rounds and feel pretty comfortable with it. As it gets going, what you're going to start to notice is it's starting to feel a little bit harder than you want it to. The rest time is getting much shorter than you want it to be. You're going to start to feel these sort of emotions of panic start to set in. Can I hold this? Do I want to hold this? Do I need to completely empty the tank on this next one to have a chance to go? So all of those factors that sort of play into a beep test are what I wanted to try and leverage here.
Yeah.
The really, really good thing that I like about this, though, that I think also goes along with just sport-specific approaches and execution with this style of workout, is understanding where separation can come from. So 10 lateral burpees over the rower versus 450 meters or 500 meters of rowing. You're spending so much longer on the rower than you are doing the burpees. But when you're trying to think about getting to those last few windows on that burpee beep test, the way that you're saving 5 to 8 seconds is by sprinting your burpees and transitioning immediately into the row so that you can then hold a steady row pace.
Yeah.
And that's what those kinds of CrossFit tests look like to me.
Yeah.
I think that any time that I'm trying to get somebody to find separation on a long workout like that, it's in the mixed movement cycle rate, and it's in how urgent they're doing their transitions. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to almost teach you how to leverage those qualities and how to approach a test like this. We're not saying you have to row your head off in rounds like 7, 8, and 9, because then you're not going to recover, and then your burpees are going to be 5 seconds per rep.
I've done this test, and I definitely tried to space it out as long as possible. And there's like a pace you can hold on the row where this is very conservative and moderate, and this is like very sustainable, and then there's like too slow on a rower where it's actually like more energy to like sit up tall because you're not creating enough tension to actually pull the rower.
I had Mia test it too, and she said it was very postural. Like she just felt like her posture was fatiguing a lot.
I mean, if you finish the test for guys, you're doing over 6K of rowing.
Yeah.
So you said that the time windows decreased. Did you say how many rounds?
So the way that we set it up is they started a 4-minute round. There's 12 rounds of basically a buy-in. So the time window is going to go down by 10 seconds per round. So 4 minutes to complete the work, 350, 340. And to try and make it easy on everybody, we did the math. So all you'll have to do is just write down these time windows ahead of time. You'll know when you have to be done by, and you'll know when the next window starts.
We've got a chart that we actually put.
It looks overwhelming to look at, but really you just have to think, okay, what's my next time window? When do I have to be done by? When do I have to start by? And everything's written out for you. So 12 time windows where at the very end, you're trying to complete that work in under 2:10. And then your reward, if you happen to finish the 12th one, is to do the 13th one for time.
Yeah.
So anybody that clears that whole thing, then their score is going to be the time of their 13th window.
Yep.
Anybody else who didn't finish all of the first 12, it's basically how far did you get, the total accumulated work up to the point where you failed.
Yeah. These types of tests, I think I'm really excited about this one because, like I'd say, more of our conditioning focused tests that we've done through the course of this year and this build up through the season, you've been in control of your own pacing. It's been 3 rounds for time. It's been AMRAP. It's been a bunch of different formats that basically allows you to kind of like set the pace, and I'm in control, and then I'm going to operate as I move along. This is different, especially in a qualifier sense, and it's so sport specific because it puts people into a position where they're pacing, and then all of a sudden now they're out of control with their pace because they're on the time crunch. Yep. And you have to deal with the pressures and the stress and anxiety of knowing, all right, I have to like adjust my pace now, even though I'm starting to get fatigued and I don't really want to.
Yeah.
And that creates this like opportunity to underperform so often in these types of workouts.
Yeah, it was funny watching Matt do it yesterday. So we had Matt test the whole thing just to make sure that somebody could clear it. He's very, very good at rowing. He's very, very efficient with burpees. He got to a point real early on, I think it was like round 6 or 7, he finished it and he looked up at the clock and he's like, oh crap, this respirator, like, and you could see like in his face, like even as somebody as confident as he was, like he was joking around in the first couple, but like it's going to hit you early on. And I think one of the things that it's going to test, along with burpee efficiency and row efficiency and just engine endurance, is like your mental fortitude to try and stay calm in that moment and not panic when like you feel the fatigue set in.
Yeah, I think I was the first guinea pig for the first version.
You were the
of
very
this
first
test,
one to try
and
it.
it is way different now because what I did was 1K rows, but this style of test, and I was I was overly arrogant going in because I was like, oh, I'll just do 4 rounds of it to tell you how it feels. But 4 rounds was actually max effort in that format for me.
You shouldn't have told anyone that.
Yeah.
4
no
rounds
big deal.
was enough.
I cleared it.
I got the stimulus.
I did. But it provokes something very unique, and also I think that ties into us going into the next cycle of the old school open workouts where there's a certain amount of work and you got to clear each window.
19.2s.
Yeah. And like in the end of that, in my last round, it was actually 20 burpees in 1K. So it was shortened. Basically, the intervals were shortened by half. Yeah. And I remember thinking the same thing as Adam. Like, if I let my burpees for 20 get slow, I'm going to eat into my whole window. So I'd rather push my burpees and then get onto the rower and, hold a moderate pace. But by pushing the burpees into that last one, I like got to a red line state and got on the rower and then saw where my next completion time is. And it plays such a unique thing when you're like, hey, it's not just like when I get to that time, the workout's over, or an AMRAP where I get to the end of the workout and my reps count. It's like, I have this amount of work and I have this shrinking amount of time and I have to redline just to be able to hit it. And I think that provokes something super unique and fun. Like, or maybe not fun.
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Fun and painful.
What you said at the end is, I need to redline to hit this target. That's what these workouts bring out of the athletes that are very challenging to face. And a lot of times athletes, they get to that point where I call it like the oh shit round, where it's like, if I don't sell out right now, I will not make it past this like threshold line. Yeah. And I'd say, like, in summary for this test, because I want to talk about some of the others, is you're going to get better at rowing. You're going to get better at your burpees under fatigue. You're also going to get better at those death by kind of time crunch windows as you progress through the cycle. So excited about it.
My challenge will be, I think most people inside of the program are going to come to a point where, like, they know, like, I'm going to have to redline to finish this. Don't stop after that. Yeah. Like make sure that you start the next round. I think that, so if you picture an open-based leaderboard, which this style of test could be in something like the Open, your ability to just start moving on the next round, you know you're not going to finish it. You just completely sold your soul to finish that prior round. You know you're not going to finish. Any work that you can get done is going to be such a huge separation on a leaderboard like that. So I say it, I know what it's going to feel like. I apologize ahead of time, but challenge yourself to mentally, like, step up and try and keep moving, even though you physically just sold out.
Yeah. I mean, you see it all the time with athletes. What's up, Chris?
I was going to say, are we testing this at the beginning of the cycle and then retesting it?
Yeah, this is a test retest.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of the other workouts we're doing are not. We're going to just build to them and hit like a final test. But yeah, a lot of athletes I watch do that, where they have that goal and they hit it, and you can tell that they're like, whatever, I did it. I don't care what happens in this round. They're just kind of laying there waiting for that time to expire. But
this is going to be a hard one mentally too, to retest, because if you redline and then you have to do your next interval, like, it hurts in a whole new way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so mental toughness will get trained in this cycle.
You're rewarded with more pain.
Congratulations, suffer more.
All right, so on the, that's real specific to rowing and burpees. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the push-pull pairings, more as like a training quality, and then like what test that actually leads to near the end of the cycle.
Yeah, so on Mondays in the next cycle, what we're going to do is we're going to basically train push-pull density. When I say train, though, I still am trying to think about it in terms of how do these qualities manifest in the sports scenario? How are they mixed? What's the rep scheme like? What's the volume like? What are the biggest points of separation when you try and put these qualities together? Go ahead.
Yeah, explain for those that don't know what push-pull pairings mean.
Yeah, so for me, I think about, being on your hands, handstand push-ups, handstand walks, wall walks, things that are going to fatigue upper body pushing, and then pulling is going to be almost any gymnastics variation that's going to smoke your grip. Yep. So it could be chest to bar, it could be toe to bar, it could also be rope climbs and ring muscle ups. Yep. I think all of those qualities kind of pair themselves well with push-pull combinations. So what I'm going to try and do is we're going to not do a test retest, but we are going to train push-pull density in a way that at the end of this whole thing is hopefully going to manifest improvements in that quality. And then we're going to use I think it's one of the better tests that have been put out in the online format. 24.3 was the name of the test. Do you have it written?
Yeah, I do. It's 3 rounds.
Quarterfinals,
this is a quarterfinal workout, 24.3. 3 rounds, 10 handstand push-ups, 20 toe to bar, into 2 rounds of 10 strict handstand push-ups, 5 rope climbs, into 1 round of 10 wall facing or chest to wall handstand push-ups, and 20 ring muscle ups.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful workout. I think it has so many points of separation, and I think there's so many different ways that somebody could improve upon that. So even if you didn't do the workout before, our goal is to have you going into this workout, one, hopefully with a better awareness of what you're capable of from a rep scheme standpoint to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, but 2, to also be able to actually like show that you got better at this kind of density. So maybe like a rep scheme that you might have done last year, now you're going to try and actually like push the limits a little bit more.
Yeah. And if you haven't done it before too, it's just a really good opportunity to do a test with those things and have all the data from pretty recent. I mean, it's only last year that you could look at it. So helpful.
Would you say in this test that almost every element of it kind of matters? Like on the front end, we start with the very simple movements where it's 10 handstand push-ups, 20 toe to bar. And then it goes a little bit more progressed and advanced. We're going strict handstand push-up and rope climb, and then obviously ending with the more advanced movements of wall-facing handstand push-ups and ring muscle-ups.
It's funny because I think that they all matter, but I think they matter in different ways.
Yes.
I think the first 3 rounds are basically about movement efficiency and trying to make sure that you're saving yourself for the stronger stuff to come.
Yep.
And so it's like basically don't come out too hot.
Yeah.
Don't be so efficient and frantic that you're costing yourself extra muscle fatigue before you get to the stuff that's going to truly separate.
Yeah. And intermediate athletes, I think also who couldn't do the more advanced stuff at the end had a time cap. So then for them, it would be like, well, the first rounds are basically your race at that point.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's like, that's what I wanted to talk about was like the spectrum of level of athlete that would have that will benefit from this in different ways. So on the more intermediate level end, you've got, hey, look, you have to tolerate this volume to get to the more challenging movements. And let's see how your top end strength is on your handstand push-ups. And then if you make it to it, your wall facing and your ring muscle ups. And then on the more elite side of it, for those that can just fly through this, how do we make that opening volume have such a low impact on your ability to do big sets on the muscle ups at the end, which was the big separator.
That was really the big separator.
Yeah.
But if you got crushed at any component leading up to it, usually the wall facing handstands, you didn't have enough time to do the muscle ups, or you're just so far behind.
Cool. So we'll train a lot of those elements, push-pull pairings, and now you have a good idea and definition of what that looks like, and that'll be progressive through the cycle, and we'll hit that test near the end.
Yep.
I'm excited to see the results on that as well. And then another one, more of like a lower body focus, is weekly wall ball density.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just another thing that we can basically expect to see in an online format. I definitely bias towards wall balls as the squat density that I wanted here, but there's still going to be a mix of light to moderate thrusters. There's still going to be heavier front squats from the floor in different formats. So squat density is like what I'm trying to chase on that Wednesday format. It's going to have more of a heavier focus on wall balls just because I think it's a little bit more likely to be tested. But
yeah. I mean, I think it's good too, being in the block before the open starts, because the wall balls are, I think, in like 13 of the 15 years that we've had the open, and they're always in some format where they matter. I can't at the top of my head look back and think of, all right, when were they in there where it was just like a very low rep amount where it didn't really matter that much. They're always in there in some format where it's pretty dense, and being good at them helps a lot. Yeah. Especially too, if you're looking at like repeats, the ability to do 150 wall balls in a session and then come back 3 days later and not be like crippling sore from that is like a really large benefit as an athlete.
That's what I was going to, oh, sorry, you going to finish?
No, that's it.
I was going to jump in and say one of the reasons why I think wall balls is a good kind of squat density tool in this cycle where we're trying to drive up 1RMs is that the interference is a little bit less. Like if you did a ton of hard workouts with 135 or 95 pound thrusters and heavy squat cleans, it's just very hard to also get stronger simultaneously. But if you're doing 200 wall balls on a Wednesday and you're relatively conditioned, by Friday or Saturday, you could lift again. So I think like from a pairing standpoint, it was kind of a good base tool to build the leg conditioning.
Yeah, I like these progressions because they're going to set you up for success. And we're going to have this in a testing format. So I guess kind of a teaser for one of the Winners Coming Classic workouts is you will have a large, dense set of wall balls that matter a lot in one of the workouts that we're doing. And I would just say you'll be confident with anything over 100 reps when you see it in a workout. So
just tell them.
Are we like
there's over 100. There's wall balls.
I'm not going to say any more than that.
We're going to get hate for leaking our own workouts. These cheaters.
Call someone out. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a quality that has a lot of carryover. And like you said, it's wall ball dense and focused, but there's a lot of other squat endurance, I guess, benefits from that carry over into other areas of the sport. Yep. What else was there? I think those are the main 3. Anything else from the CrossFit side that you can?
I mean, Friday, Saturday, we basically still try to protect for more Metcon focus. I think there is probably more interval-based work on Fridays. I know that we did try and put a good amount of more handstand push-ups and handstand walking on Friday if it wasn't mixed into the throwdown that we already had planned. But Fridays and Saturdays, you can still expect for both of those to be pretty sport-specific. Those are like more Metcon from like a just like an outside perspective. Like it's not like training, I should say.
Not intervals.
Definitely making sure it's rounded through the week. But I think it's a good opportunity because, you know, with this being, hey, the season's about to start, coming to the beginning of the year, this is a good opportunity. Again, like Max was saying, the strength work, put one more final push into getting those 1RMs up. We're going to transition next year into having it just much more blended and varied. So I think if you have 1RM limitations and deficits in the sport, this is your time to jump in and really get after it, to drive up those 1RMs with one more hard push for the end of the year. And then the CrossFit side of it, like, we're starting our big volume push now for the season. So I think this is an opportunity to get your upper body push-pull patterns dialed in, to get your lower body squat endurance patterns dialed in, so you can start tolerating more volume, because we know the workouts are going to be hard when they come out if you're excited for the season. So I think the prep begins now. Anything else you guys want to add?
You just crushed it, man.
Crushed it.
Okay.
Add to that.
All right, Chris, you got anything?
Nope.
All right.
Shoot.
Good luck. Excited to get this cycle started.
You just ruined your good exit. All right, later, guys.